Well, former Greens leader Bob Brown is urging the left-wing Greens party to reject Anthony Albanese's safeguard mechanism. He calls it pathetic. He's calling for the Greens to instead increase emissions reduction targets in response to what he calls an existential climate crisis. He's also accused Chris Bowen of orchestrating a pressure campaign on the Greens.
It is simply not going to cut the mustard. We want action on climate change. And ACF has taken the Jackie Lambie position, which has said, oh, well, let's take this now and we'll do something about coal and gas down the line. But there is no point of political bargaining, no leverage left if the Greens simply handed away this opportunity. And I've been in politics long enough to know that you have to use leverage when you get it, and this is the one time for it.
Okay, let's bring in our Thursday panel, National Senator Matt Canavan and Sky News host and Associate Editor at the Australian newspaper, Jenna Clarke. Great to see you both of you coming from Canberra this afternoon. What do you think, Matt? The green ghosts of 2009 seem to still be haunting the ALP.
Well, the ALP's only got themselves to blame because they've gone down this path of a carbon tax, which they apparently would never implement, and under a government one of them led. And now they're in this mess in the Senate because, I mean, I have some respect for Bob Brown's commitment to his cause. He is right when he says that the Labor's safeguard mechanism won't do anything for the climate. It's not going to change the temperature of the globe. China's building over 100 gigawatts of coal-fired power stations today, or this year. This small little change in Australia is not going to do anything environmentally. What it will do, though, is it represents a new tax, a price, a cost on doing business in this country. This carbon tax applies to petrol refining in Australia, so your petrol prices will go up. It applies to Qantas and Virgin, so not only will you have to worry about your flight being on time, it'll be more costly too. So this is not what we need. We don't need a carbon tax right now when inflation's at record levels. Hope the Labor Party just drops this completely if the Greens won't negotiate with them. They don't have to force it. They don't have to pass it through. They tried, but the best thing they could do was get back to focus on the issues that matter to Australian people. Yeah.
Well, Jenna, you've been in Canberra this week. You've been sitting in Question Time every single day, one of the only journalists who actually still goes to Question Time. Where do you think this safeguard mechanism is actually headed?
Sharri, today there was probably more emissions out of the House of Representatives when Chris Bowen stood up to talk about. There was a great question, obviously, by the leader of the National Party, David Littleproud, who asked a very reasonable question on behalf of his constituents.
But hold on, where were you going with that? There was more emissions out of the House of Reps.
More emissions.
What does that mean?
You should have heard the yelling. The poor speaker was getting very flustered. Everyone was yelling because Chris Bowen stood up. I think he really misunderstood the question in regards to David Littleproud asking about farmers are concerned that solar panels are basically taking over pristine agricultural land, and probably because Chris Bowen hasn't worked on a farm or been to a farm recently, didn't really understand the premise of the question. So the yelling, I think we should have probably had an emissions monitor on the House today because it was off the charts.